Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic hypersonic.
Positronic hypersonic.
Positronic hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the latest episodes of Star Wars Andor. The first of the 3 episodes that aired this week was called Messenger, and as the episode starts, it's 1 year later than where we were at the end of the previous episode, and we're on Yavin. Luthen's man, Will, arrives at a base before walking into the woods to meet Bix and Cassian at an outpost to ask if they're ready to work on behalf of Luthen, and apparently he wants Cassian and Bix to help him kill Dedra. Meanwhile, Dedra's boss tells her to declare martial law on Gorman in advance of the Empire forcefully extracting the mineral they need. Cyril confronts Dedra about being kept a bit out of the loop as to what's happening, but she only tells him to be ready to bug out. Security tightens on Coruscant in the wake of the insurgency on Gorman. Back on Yavin, Bix takes Cassian to see a Force healer, much to his dislike, for a blaster wound he's apparently suffered, and the Force healer not only senses Cassian's presence immediately, but also seems to intuit what he's been through, and that there's somewhere he needs to be, just by touching him. Cyril, meanwhile, visits the Resistance to tell them he wants to absolve them of their activism by blaming outsiders, but his contact rejects this idea. Cassian goes with Will to Gorman, where the black-suited Imperial Hatchet Squad arrives. Vel visits Bix to tell her how strongly Cassian is needed for the cause, as Cassian checks into a hotel in the capital on Gorman, intent on killing Dedra, and discovers stormtroopers just above his room. And that's where the episode ended. The next episode was called Who Are You? And as it starts, Cassian is alarmed to see the Empire barricading Dedra's building as Dedra worries over the fast pace of the escalation of the Imperial offensive. Meanwhile, a march begins on the square despite the Resistance leaders attempting to stop it. In the square, Cassian sees Dedra on a low balcony as Cyril enters the Imperial building, and a protest builds as the square is sealed off and stormtroopers move in. The protest turns into a mass performance of the Gorman anthem, as Cyril, now horrified at the realization of what's occurring, grows his balls and angrily confronts Dedra, who spills the beans. An Imperial sniper deliberately takes out an Imperial trooper, setting off a massive gunfight crossfire. Realizing that Cyril is in the crowd, Dedra goes out on the balcony, but Cassian can't get a shot. The Empire sends in the droids as a Resistance member sets off a bomb, as Cassian almost takes the shot at Dedra, only to be tackled by Cyril, and they fight as a grenade goes off right next to them. Cyril then gets Cassian's blaster and gets the drop on him, but he's taken out, killed, by one of the Resistance leaders. The Resistance members begin to escape into the square, but are pursued by droids, one of which almost gets Cassian before it's mowed down by a Resistance member in a tank of sorts. As Cassian gets ready to depart, Gorham Will decides to stay behind to be with Trina and tells Cassian to leave and to tell people what happened there. A Resistance broadcast goes out reporting on the massacre as a tearful Cassian flees in the tank and Dedra breaks down. A mainstream reporter disseminates the Imperial story that the insurgents were supported by outside agitators. And that was the end of the second episode. The third and final episode this week was called Welcome to the Rebellion, and as it starts, the Gorman senator is arrested as Mon Mothma and Bail Organa discuss her speaking out about the massacre and about them getting off of Coruscant, but Bail says he can't leave because he needs to buy time for the rebellion. Cassian prepares for a new mission to help Mon as a bug is found in her office and smashed, before Mon is approached by Luthen, who tells her she's in danger of being arrested from Bail's people and that he'll send someone for her. Luthen then meets with Cassian and Clea about the rescue mission, which is proving tricky to even attempt, before Cassian arrives at the Senate undercover as a reporter. Bail advises Mon to go with his people, whom he doesn't know are compromised, after she speaks in the Senate. An Imperial operative inside Bail's extraction team inadvertently reveals herself and knocks out Bail's regular team member. Bail then invokes an emergency clause to allow Mon to speak the truth about the Gorman massacre to the Senate, and the Empire tries but fails to shut down the live feed before she concludes her remarks. Before she's then met by Cassian in the hall, and as he escorts her out, they're stopped by the Imperial operative, but she's dealt with by Luthen's man, and Mon and Cassian continue to try to leave as stormtroopers move in. Cassian kills Mon's compromised driver and escapes with Mon in her Senate car before taking her to his and Bix's former house, and then returning to Bix in the woods where he tells Bix he's done with Luthen and the rebellion. When he wakes up the next morning, he finds her gone and that she's left a message explaining that she can't let him quit for her because he's too important to the movement, and that she'll find him after the rebels win. The rebels then reconstruct and convert the Imperial droid that Cassian brought back from Gorman, and that's where the third episode of the week ended. So, that breakdown is a very pale and sort of tepid account of the events of the episodes. You really have to see them to get the gravity of all of those moments that I described in the breakdown, because they're all very heavy. They're all very heavy moments. Everything in these three episodes was really emotionally hefty, because what we saw was the cruelty of the Empire, where they want this mineral from Gorman and they're going to do whatever it takes to get it, even if it means tricking the people there into mounting a resistance that they would then squash with their superior power, and then turn around and pretend they had no choice but to do, because the people resisted their authority, which they only did because the Empire stoked it. They keep talking about how it was outside agitators. Yeah, they were the outside agitators that riled the people up in order to get them to rebel against what they were doing, so that they would have the cover they needed to squash it. And, this is something that has happened in real life history, and that continues to happen in real life history to a certain degree, because governments are shitty often, and they do these things. And so it's just, chilling to watch a show about it. And then you have to dive into the fact that Dedra was keeping everything from Cyril, who, is her partner, her lover, but she didn't let him know that it was all orchestrated and that they just intended to take the mineral anyway, even if it meant pulling off a massacre, which they do. And even to the point where the first shot against one of their own was pulled off by the Empire to, again, give them cover to start firing on the civilians. So, and again, that's something that's happened in history, in real life. So, again, it was just really chilling to see that. What confused me a little bit is how they showed Dedra and Cyril in this episode to sort of be not cool with what's happening, which is weird because they were always just so pro-Empire. I mean, Cyril in the beginning was all about enforcing Imperial order on Phoenix and getting Cassian and stopping the resistance, and so was Dedra. So why they suddenly, to different degrees anyway, seem to be growing, a conscience, each of them, was a little strange. But, Dedra didn't grow one to the point where she refused to follow through with orders. She went through with it on the promise of being promoted and so forth. So, again, really horrifying to see someone make that choice. On the flip side, you see Mon Mothma standing up to the Empire and being courageous and, paying a price for it, because now she's out of the Senate, she's off Coruscant, and that's it. She's just in the rebellion now and has to always be looking over her shoulder. And so that was great to see. And, then there was the plot line with Bix and Cassian, where he ends up, sort of out of the blue being read by a force healer who realizes that he's important, which of course he is, and how that affected Bix in terms of her not being able to allow herself to be the reason that he quits and steps away from what she believes to be his destiny, because she very much believes in the force healer and her ability to sort of see the future. So, another sad but powerful plot point. And then, in the end, we get to see how the Empire covers up what really happened and how Cassian came by the droid that he's going to have in Rogue One. So overall, just great stuff, great human drama, great intrigue drama. The acting is fabulous across the board. And I'm really looking forward to these last three episodes and how they're going to fill in the remaining blanks between what's been happening on Andor and Rogue One, especially given how Rogue One itself was a film that fills in the blanks between the end of the Clone Wars and A New Hope. So it's just all fitting together, and this show, I think, couldn't be better, and I think it's fantastic. And if you're not watching it, you should definitely check it out. But that's really all there is to say. I have nothing but praise for this show, so if I were to go on, I would just be repeating myself. So I'm going to get out of here, but I will be back with another video soon. Until I return, may the Force be with you.